Today on Outside the Box Reviews, we're taking a look at my newest project attempt here. And we are going to hell. We're creating a Jason Goes to Hell hockey mask. Or we are not. I am, but you're watching if you're actually watching this. But anyway, I bought this blank off of Etsy. This is by a seller called Friday Hawks 13. And this is actually the first time I've worked off of a blank like this. I've gotten a pre-cut blank from JDF Studios before to make my part 3 mask, but this is the first mostly uncut blank. He did cut around the mask, so we have the jagged edge there on the side, but the eye holes are still there, the accent at the top is still there. There's a little section back here that's still here, which I didn't even know was on the mask. I assume that gets cut out. I can't find any reference photos, so I'm gonna keep digging to make sure. But that's basically where we're starting here. I am referencing some photos I have of the mask. This is the Friday the 13th Prop Museum book. Phenomenal little book of a bunch of photos, mostly from the later Jason movies, but they're great photos of props from the films. So this is really a nice reference to, you know, get an idea of what the mask should look like. There's another picture back here of the full costume. Really good reference point, but this is the one I'm going to mostly concentrate on. And I'm going to go ahead and mark up the mask to make the holes a little more visible. Obviously with the standard hockey mask holes on here. I don't think the blank has spots for the rivets, so I'm going to have to figure those out. The straps don't get here until tomorrow. Same with the chevron. So I really can't do much more than like a base coat on this thing until I know where all that's going. But I can at least start cutting out everything else on it. So I kind of just Sharpied on the points where I'm going to be drilling out the holes. And now it's really hard to actually look at. This is just a guide for me. They are indented because it's vacuum formed, but some of them aren't very deep. So this will just kind of help give me a visual clue as to what I'm drilling out here. Did have a question about a couple of them. There's some extra marks. I think they were the original snap connectors, because I know there's one down here that's like where the snap connector would have gone on the mask, and it looks like that's the one that's up here and also up here, but I just want to make sure I have everything figured out. I'm gonna go look at some other blanks on YouTube probably just to make sure that these are correct. What I'm seeing is really there. I mean, they're in the vacuum form. I can kind of pick them up in the pictures and the reference, but I just don't want to drill a hole that's not supposed to be there. So I'm going to dig a little deeper and then probably start cutting this thing out. So this is where we are right now with the mask as far as markings. I'm trying to figure out the top. The reference in the book, which is screen used props, or at least props from the production, maybe not necessarily screen used, but they tend to have the top being more or less intact except for the axe wound. This little mark here on the side that is in the blank, I can't find any reference for, but the strap kind of goes over top of it, so I'm not really worried about cutting that out. Bottom more or less looks smooth except for the part 7, part 6 screw up here on the side, but the top is what's kind of throwing me off. I find plenty of reference from the end scene of the film where that's, you know, all chopped up and stuck into his face, which is how I remember the mask being, but a lot of these reference photos have the very top edge being very clean. So what this probably means is I'm gonna have to pop the movie back in and figure out how I want it to look. I know, I mean, the struggle with any of this is that they used many different masks during the production of the film, so there is no one definitive mask. I mean, there are two very distinct styles of mask in this film itself. There's one without the eye cut and one with the eye cut. I prefer the eye cut on there. I think it looks cooler, makes it look more unique, but there's no way to get this 100% perfect, I don't think. And I know it's not going to be. Okay, so after looking back at the movie and reference photos, this is what I've got. The shaded in black is all going to get cut away. Well, obviously didn't bother shading the full eyes in because that's kind of obvious. There's a couple areas that are just outlined, that those are not getting cut, like that at the top and that on the side. Yeah, so I know inevitably somebody's going to look at this and be like, hey, that's wrong, or you mix things from two different masks that were used in production. Yeah, I get it. I know, but I think this is good enough for what I want out of this, so I'm going to start drilling out the holes, then start cutting away the extra bits of mask. So to do all this, I'm going to start off with a drill, obviously. I'm going to start with this 5/16 bit here and see how that looks. If the holes need to be larger, I'll go up to this, I think it's a 3/8 bit. Measuring the masks I have, it's kind of somewhere in between these two, so I'm going to go smaller first because can't undo a larger hole. And then to do all the distressing and everything, I have my Dremel here. Probably going to use a couple sanding drums. This one's beat, so I'll have to replace it. Also some cutoff wheels and this little carbide bit that's good for getting kind of those inner details. Alright, so now I've drilled all the holes, done all the damage. I think it's looking pretty good. You got the cracked out eye, got all the scalloping around the top, bullet hole, which I may burn a little bit. I don't know, I was gonna say it's a propeller wound, but I mean, it's not the same mask that got that, so I don't know what that is. But it's all pretty screwed up looking now, as it should be. So I'm gonna hit this with some sandpaper, kind of clean everything up, probably do the burning on that after I sand it, I think. Alright, so there it is, I'll sand it up, which is mostly just to help the paint adhere to it and to clean up some of the rough edges and things. And then I did burn the bullet hole up there. It's not quite the same shape as the movie, but it does give it kind of a nice, different look than just all the other, machined holes. Has a different texture to it, which I like. I don't know, I'm debating just priming it now, because I'm assuming the holes that go in for the strap are just going to cover up anything I scratch up on that primer, so I may just prime it today. So, like 2 seconds after saying I wasn't sure if I was going to prime it yet, I'm priming it. Might as well. I'm going to use this white. Typically I would use black, but looking at the shots of the mask, it actually looks like the inside of it is like a silver. I don't have a silver primer. I don't know if that's actually a thing that exists, but this will get it closer, and then I can kind of do my early layers of paint off of the white color anyway. I've added on a pretty light coat of gray just to darken up the base a bit. So I was just playing around with this. I thought it was kind of interesting. This is the new Part 8 mask I just picked up at Days of the Dead in Atlanta. That's the Goes to Hell mask over top of it. You can see how much smaller it is. It's kind of funny. I mean, this is technically supposed to be the same mask, right? So I'm going ahead and trying to get the camera on what I'm doing, but I'm adding a little bit of liquid latex around where some of the cracks are, specifically around the eye here, and then kind of some of the damage up at the top, maybe around all the edges. I gotta look back at the mask again, but basically the idea is to try to simulate some of the flesh stuck to his mask. And I saw somebody do this with rubber cement. I figure latex will work just as well, but I don't know. I think it could be an interesting look. Add a little gore to the mask, add a little something unique to it that's not on any of the other Jason masks. And since the iconic thing with this mask is that it's grown into his face, I think it'll kind of be cool that it took some of his face with it. So I have the latex around the edges of the mask here. I did decide to do the bottom as well, just because the whole mask is really kind of in his face, so I just add a layer. Once this cures, I'm going to paint it up with a little bit of some reds and blood colors and stuff just to make it look a little more fleshy, and we'll take it from there. So while I was doing the latex on the front, I actually decided to add some inside as well, just to take it up another notch and just have it look like this really was peeled off of his face. So this is all just, full of his face, I guess. His face is now melted into the mask, both on the outside and the inside. I didn't do the nose because I kind of figured that he doesn't really have a nose at this point. I mean, I don't think any of the Jasons past, Part 4 actually has a nose, so I wouldn't think there would be much of anything in that hole to stick to the mask, but the rest of it is just going to be a bloody mess. This looks much more bright red on camera than it does in front of me here, but this is my attempt of bloodying up the inside. So there's kind of a flesh tone base in there over the latex, and then the blood. This is the blood for the blood god from Citadel. I love that stuff. It is just the best blood paint I've ever seen. Not that I'm an expert on the subject, but it works really damn well. It has a great sheen to it. If you clump it on a little bit, it pulls up nice and shiny red. Where it's a little thinner, it looks a little more dried. But I definitely kind of wanted a wet look for this, just to, make it look like it's freshly pulled off his face. Because for whatever reason, the Jason in this movie does seem to have a lot of blood red meat going on with his head. I don't know. I always kind of went under the assumption that the Jason Goes to Hell Jason was actually starting to kind of heal itself and was a little less zombie than the previous incarnations. So yeah, that's my bloody inner mask there. And then I did add the blood to the outside. Let me see if I can show it without. So yeah, there's the kind of meat work around the edges there. That's going to get toned down a little bit when I weather the mask, I think. But I gotta wait to do more of that. So the box came in from JDF Studios right on time. And I got the strap for the back of the mask and the chevron decal. So basically, I actually went ahead and drilled out the holes for the strap. That went pretty well, didn't really mess up the paint at all. Plus, most of it's going to be covered by the strap itself. The only real problem was because I added all the bloody stuff on the inside. It kind of clogged up the drill bit with a little bit of latex while I was drilling through it. Didn't really think that one through, but it's all good. Just cleaned out the drill bit between each step. So now I'm going to go ahead and apply the decal for the chevron, and we can move forward. So it's actually time to go ahead and do some real painting on this now. I went and picked up a couple cheap acrylic paints from Walmart to work on this with. So I have some real brown, then I have a burnt umber that's a little bit darker than that. And then I have this pavement color, which is like a very, very dark gray. I may put some black in there when it gets towards the end, but I think this might actually be a little more realistic looking for dirt and grime. So we're just gonna go with those three for now and see how far they get us. Usually when I'm doing this kind of stuff that is, very low precision, just kind of weathering stuff, I tend to get these cheapo paints. These are from Walmart. They're, I think, like 50 cents to $1 a bottle, depending on what kind you get. They're cheap, and they do the job. When it comes to like painting action figures and stuff, I've really realized that there is a benefit in using the higher end stuff like the Citadel. It applies cleaner. It just, I think, overall looks better. But when you're just making stuff look ugly, this will do the trick. So, looking at my reference here, the browns are all just kind of random. So, I'm gonna be random with it. I'm just using my hand to apply it all. It doesn't really need to be too precise. Okay, so this is my first time attempting to ever rivet anything. So I've got the other straps in there. Actually, that's kind of a lie. I did test this out like 2 seconds before I did it on this. I went to Harbor Freight, bought like a $4 rivet gun because I only had to do like 6 rivets, and it came with a bunch of spares. So I tested on an old Blink hockey mask I had just to make sure I knew what I was doing. These rivets from JDF, I think they're the 3/16. That's what I drilled the holes at. And then they come with a washer. And from what I could tell from the reference photos in the Friday the 13th Prop Museum book, the washer does go on the inside. So when you're putting the rivet in, it goes through the leather strap, through the mask. Washer goes on, and that's the head of it, or whatever you call it. I don't know the correct terminology, but that's the part that bulges out and seals the rivet inside. Let's see if I can actually get this on camera. With all these, it seems to take 2 squeezes. There it is. I get it on camera. There you go. So I'll just do the last one here. And there we have it, all riveted up, straps on there. I also think it's odd that it's asymmetrical, but because the eye is missing, it goes like the normal location on this side, and it goes a bit lower on the other. And of course you have the top here. All that's left is I'm going to probably leave the strap about this weathered. I'm not sure. I may go back in later and weather it up more. It does seem a little clean, but it also does look like they dirtied it up a little bit. I don't want to go too far with it. So then really what I want to do is weather up these rivets. In the movie, they look much darker, and obviously these are fresh, clean, brand new rivets. Don't want to do that. And then spray this with a clear coat, and I think we'll be in business. And for weathering up these rivets, I'm going to use one of these little Tamiya weathering sets. They're basically kind of like a powder. They come with a little brush to add them on, and I'm going to use this this middle soot color and maybe a little bit of the rust. I might do some of the rust first and then hit it with the soot. So I did decide to use some of that soot texture on the strap here. So that's roughly how it is clean from JDF Studios, and that's what I've done to it. So you can see there's a decent difference there. I think the darker, it looks better, it looks more weathered and worn, and that matches, I think, the rest of the mask. So I'm gonna go with that. It's more or less complete. Pretty happy with how this turned out. I think overall it captures the look of the mask. Like I mentioned at the beginning, some of the things are definitely, my own touch to it, and some is kind of combining different references I found. But for my collection, I think I'm pretty happy with how this came out. So this got me so close to finishing my Jason mask collection. I actually did go ahead and order a finished Uber Jason mask and a kit for a Part 10 mask. So after that, that will leave just the remake from the movies. So I'll probably end up getting the Mortal Kombat mask at some point too, since I have the other two masks based on the games. And just to finish out the video here, I wanted to show the new Jason Goes to Hell mask off next to a couple other masks I've made. These are actually two of the other three, I guess, more complete Jason masks I've ever done. I mean, I've done a couple goofy ones. I tried to make a Leatherface inspired one that didn't go so well. But basically, here's the part 3 I did a while back. I have a video all on this about taking the JDF Studios mask kit and making it. They don't sell the kits anymore, but you can still buy all the parts. I don't really know why they stopped selling them all as a one big package. It must have just been a logistical thing. But yeah, that's my part 3. And then I have my Savini Jason mask. This was made off of one of the cheap little China bucks that is available everywhere, eBay or Amazon, really cheap. So that was a black mask, and I really just did a lot of weathering and stuff on it. This is the one that has the light up LED eyes. I think I actually have a video on that costume as well. I think it's in one of my Halloween vlogs from 2018. And then here's the new guy. And the other one that isn't in this lineup that was I think a decently done one was the Jason X mask I did for a friend for Christmas a few years ago. But I am getting my own X blank coming in hopefully soon. So if you guys like this video, I may be doing another one in the near future.